Today's date is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. My name is Akofa Bruce. May you please state your name for the interview?
My name is Andrew French,
And can you say the location that we are recording in?
London, England.
The name of this project is Checkpoint for Border Crossings. Okay, so we can begin. So, can we start with you just telling me about your beginnings with border crossings?
Gosh. 2014, I think, was the time when I auditioned for This Flesh Is Mine, which was rehearsing, trying to remember now, they in London, and then in Ramallah, Palestine. And then we performed in Palestine. And we came back to London and performed in London, all in the same year. I can't remember when. Michael invited me. It's a good story because Michael invited me, Michael Woolland, the artistic director of Border Crossing, and he didn't really interview me. It's the first time it's ever happened to me actually as an actor. We just sort of chatted about the project a little bit. We read, if I remember correctly, a little bit together, and then refreshingly, Michael offered me the part before I left. I had read the play and fell in love with him, Brian Woolland's writing. I still love that writing. And I remember Michael saying to me, "How did you?" I remember saying to Michael, "So, how did you hear about me?" He goes, "Oh, I saw you in a play that would have been 15 years before, and thought, oh, one day I'll find something to work with him," which is a lesson to all actors. Anyway, so we rehearsed a little bit. I might be misremembering that in London, but the real joy and strength of border crossing and working with border crossings is we then went to the country and had that cultural interchange with people living in Palestine. It was a life-changing experience. Also, I think we came into Tel Aviv, so we came into Israel, and then we were driven by Imano and one of the other actors, the artistic director of ASHTAR Theatre Company, who was a co-production with. Oh gosh, I remember that. I remember that journey in that minibus so vividly. Iman's an incredibly charming, if somewhat intimidating presence. She was giving us a history of, you know, how life was like, what life was like for her on one side of the border, and the way she had to negotiate her life. And for all of us, I imagine we're quite politically. We felt that we were quite politically astute, but then within half an hour being there, certainly by the time we got to Palestine, you realised you didn't know anything at all. It's an extraordinary idea, to take people from different cultures, put them together, smush them together, and then ask them to create some sort of theatre. You can't help but get a deeper understanding. It was, a life-changing experience. Although at times a painful one, because you have to come face to face with what you don't know. Come face to face with well, certainly from this part of the world, your privilege, in a very real sense. Often theatre, like most births, involves much joy, sometimes much pain. It was tricky playing the baddie in this production. I don't think Achilles is the baddie, but he certainly is a symbol of violence and rage. Rage, Achilles. So to play that character, I felt at times early on like a bit of a loner because, in my mind, Achilles represented America and aggression, Israel. when you were around Palestinian people and you saw face to face what they were having to, how their lives were, to be the person who represented unbridled rage, unrestrained power. I was quite lonely for a while, but I was just being a silly actor and realised it was just a play. But yeah, it was an extraordinary process. We lived in a little apartment. Gosh, it was an amazing time. And a time that, even though Protestants still do amazing, amazing work now, I'm not sure you could do that kind of project now. Three of us, three English actors, were taken over to Palestine, popped in the middle of Palestine, in a lovely little apartment which had goats on the roof. We played basketball in the court in the morning, in the front, and then have eggs around the table that we brought from around the corner in the blazing sunshine. It was an extraordinary, extraordinary time, and learning lines late at night. I mean, sorry. Yeah.
Can you tell me about your journey to get there before you even were
Ah,
established?
do you mean my journey as an actor, or my journey?
No, the specific journey on the trip, but you
Oh,
can go into that as
gosh, I don't remember. I'm trying to remember. I think it's a long time ago. I think. Well, obviously we took a plane. Plane from, I want to say, Heathrow into Tel Aviv. Ugh, ugh, yeah. Huh. I've been to Israel before. Uh, what becomes immediately apparent is that they don't take security lightly. So that sort of constant sort of questioning, and it just took a long time to get through security. I remember that. Ugh, it took a long time to get through security. I'm beginning to remember more now. And then you come out into the heat and the light and the bustle of Israel. I remember there was a little bit of a wait or a bit of confusion. That's often the case with trying to find out who was going to pick us up. Ugh. And then we got on the minibus, and I think we had to, I might be misremembering this, it's either on the way in or the way back, but I think on the way, you have to do you have to cross the border from Israel into Palestine. And there's a wonderful, not wonderful, I was going to say thrilling, but even that's not quite right, but a ratcheting up of tension as to whether you're going to be allowed to get to the place where the whole reason for you getting there. I remember sitting in the front, as was my wont in those days, talking to Iman. I remember also, like, there were parts of Israel and in Palestine that were beautiful, but like sort of war, how you would imagine war stricken, it's like walls that were just rubble. Sort of brush plants. Uh, but I also remember there being lots of laughter. Everyone was really excited about going and getting involved in this project. I can't remember if I was nervous or not. I suspect, because I remember walking around the yard trying to learn lines. So I remember probably that I wasn't off book. I hadn't learned all my lines yet, so I would have been nervous about whether I could perform. And I remember on the journey thinking, I remember on the journey in the minibus thinking, I have to be Achilles. I played Achilles and Agamemnon. I played a lot of Greek characters, Hector, in my career. And there is such a weight of expectation about those characters. I can't remember anything else about the journey. Too long ago.
That's good. But yeah, you can tell me about the goats on the roof and
Um, what else? Oh gosh, it was an extraordinary project. So we worked with, I think there was Gerard, myself and David Broughton Davis, DBD, as the three English actors. Michael came. Brian, the writer, turned up about 3 days later, 4 days later. And on the Palestinian side, there was Iman, there was Razan. Gosh, I always forget his name. Luckily, this is him. Emil, Razan, and Emil, Razan, and Iman. And they were the three Palestinians. We rehearsed at ASHTAR Theatre base. It was, I mean, gosh, having mint tea in the afternoons, just walking around Palestine. I really loved it. I really loved Palestine. I really loved the Palestinian people. Um, I remember on the table read, when you sit around for the first time and read the scripture out loud, Razan, who I became very close to, who played Briseis, who is my love interest, one of my love interests in the play, saying that the Palestinians were shocked because, well, I really went for it. That's not so much the case nowadays. People don't do that sort of thing. But I remember I really sort of wanted to say, I am Achilles to these new actors I was working with. And I think, remember, they're listening to it in a second language. And I think that created a sense of me being quite fierce, which I'm not really. We rehearsed a lot. Briseis, Razan, and I got very close. And actually, I really, in fact, I loved all the company, but Razan and I got very close. And Emil, who played Patroclus, or Patroclus, depending on how passionate you are about rhythm and verse, also got really close. And we hung out a lot. And that was really important, actually. After rehearsals, Iman, wonderful hostess, would take us to places. We ate late, discussed the play, and discussed politics. I mean, it's, of course, I would say this, but it really is an advert for the kind of work that this company does. Because the understanding around the dinner table infected how we work together. Palestinian theatre style is very different, I would argue, to an English theatrical tradition. How do those two work together? What can we learn from each other? It was extraordinary. Um, yeah, we eat and drink out most nights. Not crazily, but really it was about the conversation. It was about walking around Ramallah. I remember there was a restaurant, I wish I could remember the name of it, that we liked very much, which had a balcony on the corner and you could look straight down the main street of Ramallah. And it was, you know, there was a time in theatre in this country, where those kind of tours were quite regular since COVID, and etc. etc. Those tours don't happen as much now. But as an actor and as a human being, I could say they were game changing. I was definitely a better actor by the end of that process than I was at the beginning. Um, yeah, I'd go back to Palestine again if I could. I love the people, really like the theatre, really liked the determination to achieve despite how the world might be. I'm trying to think what else I remember strongly. I do remember waking up to the sound of goats. I don't know why that's stuck in my mind, but it would do, wouldn't it? I also remember having lunch with Gerard MacArthur, who played Priam, the father of Hector, who I'd kill. He played somebody else as well. And we went to a restaurant, played Phoenix. We went to a restaurant where I'd asked for something on the menu. We were chatting away. I think Michael must have finished half day. Why would I not be there? It feels like it was a week. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We were not in rehearsals in the middle of the afternoon. We said to this very lovely person who went to the restaurant, can we have this and this and this? Go, no problem, no problem. Sitting on the balcony, chatting away, and then you could see him sort of running down the street. Isn't that the person who just took our order? Being incredibly English about it, like it's a bit strange. And like 20 minutes, half an hour later, see him coming back with a bag clearly of the supplies for the food that we just ordered. Of course, he's not sitting there with bunches of lemons and whatever it is in his kitchen. But I don't know why that was so instructive to me. Like you just take it for granted. Same has happened to me. Same experience has happened when I've taught in West Africa, I suppose. You just go, of course. We take it for granted that what you have on the menu, you're probably going to have, and will give it to us. But the world isn't like that. I don't know why that struck such a chord with me. This man with his white plastic bag, jogging back to cook for me in Gerard. But that stayed in my mind.
You mentioned that one highlight was the kind of conversations that you were having with the people that you met there, and
Yeah,
the play that you performed in was
yeah.
heavily talking about the politics in the Arab world and Western interference.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it like to hear the perspectives of Palestinians as you guys are having those conversations?
Yeah. I mean, my memory is, I think on the first night we went out and everybody sort of connected to the production came out. I put on my strongest charm offensive, charming and making people laugh, as you do as an actor. And then the conversation turned more serious later on in the night. And you try to think, you try to act like, I try to act like, well, I have this point of view, and I think this, and I've read these books and listened to this program. But nothing beats their personal experience. So you'd hear about, there were no road signs in Ramallah. There were no road signs. They've been taken down. Try and look on a Google map. This is 14 years ago. Yeah, 14 years ago. 12 years ago. Try and look on Google Maps and Ramallah doesn't really come up. Why? Well, because who controls the information controls the power. That's not Palestine. I don't, things like that. Not having control over your. Michael used to always talk about Palestinians walking around with a bunch of keys so they can get back to their own. They hope that they're one day going to get back to their own homes. So good image. Walking around, surviving, but inside there's a deeper fire of hope. So basically, I remember it being mostly women connected with ASHTAR Theatre Company, basically telling me I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. That's how I remember that first night. It was charming and lovely and wonderful, but basically going, we don't know what you're talking about. And I found that really useful until I got over my pride, which is always a tricky thing to do. Once I got over my pride, I found it really useful for Achilles. And he's convinced he's right, convinced he has the moral authority to do what he feels. He really doesn't know anything. Doesn't know anything. He's just feeling, he's not really thinking, he's just feeling. I thought that was really useful. I was just charmed, I'm sure it comes across, I was just charmed by almost everything in Palestine. I loved it. Yeah, it's one of the greatest. I've acted for over 30 years, and I've acted in almost certainly on every continent, pretty much, in this world. I've acted in lots of different countries, been everywhere, from South America to Russia to Japan to Australia, North America. Nothing, nothing comes close to the experience of working on border crossing. And also, gosh, we were treated incredibly well. So funny now, the things that I take for granted now. I know as actors, you can go on tours and somebody's forgotten to absolutely guarantee where you're staying that night. It didn't happen on this trip. It was an extraordinarily wonderful trip. And that made that kind of kindness and thoughtfulness and laughter made how I saw Palestinians being treated even more painful. And what sometimes comes from seeing that pains is anger. And anger was also very useful for Achilles. He's a very angry boy.
And how did the audience receive your work?
Well, hard to tell for me in Ramallah because lots of people are hearing it. It's quite heightened language, how Brian writes. It's verse almost. You can see it by the way it's written. It's look at this. Do that, my brother. Show off the splendor of Achilles, the new god of war. Muster a troop of myrmidons. Let everyone know that Achilles has returned to the battle. That Achilles is hungry for blood as a she-wolf in spring, hunting prey for her cubs. That's not how usual plays are written. So, if you are speaking English, and they all spoke English, most of them spoke English incredibly well, as a second language, that's another barrier. They listened patiently. We had a Q&A, I feel. I feel like we had a Q&A. And people were responsive and passionate and interested, and there was lots of applause. But I didn't really know how the play was received until we did it in London. And then there were all sorts of complications because members of the members of the cast couldn't get out of Palestine, couldn't get them a visa. So we had to recast. Yes, we had to recast all of their parts. Is that true? All of their parts. I remember Briseis was recast, and I remember Hector was recast. But I don't think Iman. I think Iman still did it. Anyway, and that was very well received. That was a really great show. Not often felt how charming a character can be. And he's not very nice, Achilles, but he's very charming. And when when we were in London, I realised it was a once in a lifetime part. So it was really well received. There were lots of Palestinians who, they were so interested in theatre. Gosh, there were some really good actors actually. Now I'm remembering, who came up and were incredibly complimentary. I hope they didn't feel that the parts that were played by the English members of the cast were parts that they should have played. You can't really play Achilles as whatever he symbolised in the play. That would have been strange if that had been also played by a Palestinian, I think. But I did have some of the best lines in the play. Yeah, it was really well received. Really well received. I'd do it again. I'd do it again. I'd do it now. I'd do it again. It feels like it's incredibly pertinent as we are recording this now. Huge state power unleashed and not controlled. Yeah, feels like a play that would do very well right now.
Could you tell me more about the travel back and the experience of having two Palestinian actors' visas rejected as they were coming back to the UK? And Michael had also mentioned that Razan's brother was shot and injured, survived, but definitely something
Yeah.
traumatic to go through.
I mean,
If you're comfortable speaking about it.
well, I mean, I don't think I will speak about it in detail because it was very sad. Um, Rosanna and I were very close, and I think it's just the helplessness. I want to sound incredibly stereotypically patriarchal here. I just felt as a man incredibly helpless, really. I'm sure everybody felt helpless, but I just felt like I wanted to help somebody I cared for and had no power to do anything at all. And it all happened so quickly that we suddenly realized, oh wait, the thing that we were thinking was going to happen, which is going to be amazing, isn't happening. Oh, it is happening, but it's changed quite dramatically, and we almost have no time now. We have to go. That's what it felt like, and you get a little sense of what it must be like. When his brother got shot, which was terrible. You got a sense of like, you can sympathise when you watch it on the news or hear it on the news. Oh, isn't that terrible? But when it can happen to you, or something like will happen to you, it just does a different thing to your cellular structure. Like you're just on the edge in a completely different way. Now, I lived in London when there were IRA attacks, but it's nothing like that. And actually, I performed in Israel a couple of times. I performed in Israel on stage when there was a bomb that exploded just down the road in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, no, Tel Aviv. And that's one thing. But what I experienced in Palestine was something completely different. So I'm going to be honest about it, we were angry. I was angry, frustrated, bewildered and upset. I do remember being angry with Michael. But one was looking for someone to blame, really, rather than the solution. Because the only solution is anybody friend with Tony Blair? Do you know what I mean? Like, who do you know in the embassy? Oh, I'm an actor. So, I think in retrospect, I think a lot of us were very emotional and acted emotionally. I don't think of any other way to say it. And then we had to do the play. And as I've said previously, like, it wasn't just the play, it wasn't just rehearsals. There was something about doing it in Ramallah. It wasn't just about how close Roseanne and I got. There was something about us creating a world, a piece of art together. And it felt almost traitorous to do the play without them. It felt like that's not what should happen. Oh, it was horrible. And I was not, listen, the people who took over were fine. I'm friends with them both. And I don't envy them for it. But I wish it could have. I wish it could have been different. I remember when we heard the news. In fact, yeah, I don't want to talk about it any further. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it any further.
No, thank you for sharing.
I remember the place that we did, wonderful space that we did in London, performed it in London. I went to look here to remember the beds. It was performed at Test Bed in London in May 2014. Gosh, see, so it was performed in Palestine. Is that right? That can't be right. It says here it was first performed in Palestine 8th of May 2014. And then 11 days later it was performed. That can't be correct. Let's check that. That can't be correct. If we did it within 11 days, that's not how I remember it, but I do remember it being quick. So maybe that would have made sense. It would have made sense for him to do a bit there, and then a few days later we land in London and then do it. So that means we had to leave Palestine, go through the horrible checkpoint to get back through Israel. It was really brutal on the way out. I remember that. Really terrifying. Like we thought we might not be allowed out or miss our plane or something. And then land, go to a new rehearsal space and rehearse 2 new members of the cast in a week. Must have been. That's nuts. So that explains the slightly. My memory is that we were kind of doing it, but feeling a little bit bewildered because we left our friends. That's the other thing about theatre. In a way that other art forms don't do it. You know, you can meet somebody, a complete stranger. So I've not experienced it in the education system, I've not experienced it in any other work of life. You become deep friends incredibly quickly. And then when the show's finished, bye, we'll stay in touch. And then you might not have seen them for years. I was at a show a couple of days ago, a play a couple of days ago, and saw some people I've not seen for 10 years, chatted like old friends. That's very peculiar to theatre. You can get very, very close, you hold tightly and let go lightly. So that must have been really difficult for us because I remember, strangely enough, Gerard and I were playing. There was a table tennis table. This whole space, this test bed, it's gone now. It's been demolished and made into flats. I think. It wouldn't surprise me. But it was a really lovely, large, interesting space, sort of multi-purpose space. And we sort of cornered a little section of it, and it was the staging of it was brilliant. Michael did this wonderful. Did all sorts of interesting things about. I remember we had curtains straight down from the ceiling, which my character Achilles sort of played with. It was a really lovely design. Michael did some really good work there. But my memory now is just thinking, what's going on? Because only, according to this, 11 days earlier, we had performed in a different country with almost half our cast being different. And you know, Razan and Emil we just loved. Do you know what I mean? Like we all were very close. Really loved it. Really thought it was just. You know, these are the people that were our guides around town. You know, yalla now, yalla, let's go. See, when I say that, learning little bits of um, Arabic that I picked up whilst I was there, I hear Emil's voice because he'd be the one who was saying to us, "Come, we're going to this place now." And Razan was just the most one of the most beautiful souls I think I've ever met. Just gorgeous. So that makes sense now. I think about it. We must have been just bewildered, and then we did the play, and then the play was over, and that was the end. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't like to repeat that bit again. Although I love performing, I wish I could remember her name now. People who took over, I can't remember their names. They were perfectly fine. Gosh, I mean, now I think about it, it's amazing they learned the lines. I do remember thinking, we rehearsed quite hard. Gosh, such a blur. It's so funny how the brain sort of pushes slightly traumatic events to the back of the brain to protect you. But now I think about it, I remember, you know, there were love scenes in the play. Well, you know, as much as theatre can do, getting very intimate. And I do remember thinking, I did this less than not too long ago with somebody completely different, and being very conscious that that person needed help. And that's the other thing as well. You kind of put. Now I remember we sort of pushed our sort of confusion to one side to help these two actors who we had real sympathy for. Yeah, that was a real shame. We should do it again, Michael. We should do it again just to right that wrong. Because that was a shame. And they both deserved to, you know, they were both so excited about coming to London with this play.